Ever wonder what happens when a kid in a hoodie takes on a courtroom full of suits who've already written him off as guilty? Buckle up, because in the heart of Los Angeles, a 19-year-old underdog is about to turn a slam-dunk conviction into a jaw-dropping showdown that'll leave you cheering and chuckling. This mystic life story's tale is packed with mystery stickier than a Hollywood scandal, drama hotter than a summer freeway, and a fight for justice that hits like a caffeine-fueled all-nighter. Where are you tuning in from? Drop your city in the comments. And if you're hooked on stories that blend suspense with a sassy wink, smash that subscribe button for Mystic Life Stories. Let's dive into a courtroom where one teenager's about to flip the script. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was buzzing like a beehive on a sugar high, the air thick with tension and the faint whiff of overpriced coffee. Spectators crammed the gallery, jaded reporters scribbling notes, curious locals whispering bets on how fast this easy case would wrap. They all expected a quick conviction, like it was just another Tuesday in the justice grinder. At the defendant's table stood Kevin Brooks, a 19-year-old black teenager whose worn hoodie screamed, "I don't belong here," against the courtroom's polished wood and gleaming brass. Accused of grand theft auto and resisting arrest, Kevin looked like the system's next chew toy. Judge Harold Bennett, a grizzled vet with a scowl that could curdle milk, peered over his glasses, already mentally signing the guilty verdict. Prosecutor Douglas Wright, a smug suit with a grin sharper than a used car salesman's, leaned back, tossing knowing smirks to the gallery. To them, Kevin was just another troubled kid, destined for a cell. The room practically oozed bias, assuming guilt before the gavel even dropped. But Kevin, he wasn't sweating. His calm eyes hid a secret that could have made the gallery choke on their lattes. Since age 14, he'd been studying law under his late uncle, a public defender who went down in a shady car crash tied to a corrupt official. Kevin wasn't just prepared. He was a legal ninja with a personal vendetta against the system that chewed up kids like him. As he stood, his gaze locked with his mother, Veronica Brooks, in the back row. Her worried but fierce stare was like a shot of adrenaline, reminding him of every late-night study session, every promise to his uncle to fight the good fight. The gallery thought this was a done deal, but Kevin had been training for this moment his whole life. With a deep breath, he squared his shoulders, ready to turn this courtroom into his stage. The system was about to get schooled, and Kevin Brooks was holding the chalk. So what happens when a teenager in a hoodie decides to play chess with a courtroom full of legal sharks? Spoiler alert, it's less law and order and more like a street-smart kid schooling the suits with a grin that says, "Checkmate, suckers." Kevin Brooks, our 19-year-old underdog, is about to turn the Los Angeles County Courthouse into his personal stage, unraveling a case that's tighter than a Hollywood plot twist. With a secret stash of legal know-how and a vendetta hotter than an LA summer, he's ready to flip the script on a system that's already got his name on a guilty verdict. Got a favorite courtroom drama moment? Drop it in the comments. And if you're loving this mix of mystery, justice, and a sprinkle of sass, hit that subscribe button for Mystic Life Stories. Let's dive into the moment Kevin starts swinging. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was a pressure cooker, the gallery buzzing like a swarm of caffeinated bees. Spectators leaned forward, their whispers a mix of skepticism and morbid curiosity, betting on how fast this troubled kid would crash and burn. Kevin Brooks stood at the defendant's table, his worn hoodie a middle finger to the courtroom's polished suits and gleaming brass. Accused of grand theft auto and resisting arrest, he was the system's latest piñata, and everyone, reporters, locals, even the bailiff, expected a quick beatdown. Judge Harold Bennett, with a scowl that could make a traffic cop flinch, peered over his glasses, his voice dripping with condescension. "Let's make this quick, Mr. Brooks," he growled, already mentally filing Kevin's case under guilty. Prosecutor Douglas Wright, A smug careerist with a tie sharper than his smirk strutted like he'd already won, tossing knowing glances to the gallery. To them, Kevin was a done deal, a name on a rap sheet waiting for a cell. Then Kevin dropped the mic. "I'd like to represent myself, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady as a surgeon's hand. The courtroom froze, like someone had hit pause on a bad sitcom. Bennett's eyebrows shot up, his scowl twisting into a snort. "This isn't a debate club, son," he barked, expecting Kevin to back down. But Kevin just stood there, calm as a summer breeze, his eyes locked on the judge like he was staring down a bully in the schoolyard. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously. Locals swapped "this kid's nuts" glances. Wright chuckled, leaning back with a grin that screamed, "This'll be fun." Bennett, half amused, half annoyed, waved a hand. "Fine, proceed, but don't waste my time." Kevin nodded, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Waste time? Nah, he was about to steal it. Wright launched into his case like a peacock flashing its feathers, laying out what he thought was an airtight slam dunk. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth as a used car salesman's pitch. "The state will prove Kevin Brooks stole a 2022 Audi A6, reported missing just hours before his arrest. Officer Victor Morales witnessed him behind the wheel fleeing through downtown. His fingerprints were found on the steering wheel. Case closed." The gallery leaned in, nodding like they'd already bought the story. Wright flipped through his notes, tossing in a kicker. "The defendant resisted arrest, further proving his guilt. This is open and shut." He shot Kevin a smug look, expecting a deer-in-headlights panic. But Kevin? He was cool as a cucumber, jotting notes like he was prepping for a pop quiz he'd already aced. Kevin stood, his hoodie sagging but his spine straight, and started dismantling Wright's case like a kid taking apart a Lego set. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear and sharp, "let's talk facts. Officer Morales claims he saw me driving, but his reports got holes bigger than an LA pothole. He demanded GPS logs to verify Morales' location, citing a discrepancy in the timestamp. The gallery gasped. Reporters' pens froze. Locals swapped, "Did he just say that?" looks. Wright's smirk faltered, but he waved it off. "The officer's report is solid," he snapped, but Kevin was already moving to his next jab. "No forensic expert was called to verify the fingerprints," he said, his tone dripping with, "Y'all didn't think this through," sass. "How do we know those prints weren't planted or mishandled? Chain of custody, anyone?" Bennett's scowl twitched. Was that a flicker of respect? Then Kevin pulled out the big guns. "The car owner, Gerald Whitman, told police the thief was a white teenager," he said, pausing for effect. "Last I checked, I don't fit that description." The gallery went dead silent, jaws dropping like they'd just seen a plot twist in a Shyamalan flick. Wright fumbled his notes, muttering, "Irrelevant," but the damage was done. Kevin wasn't just defending himself, he was rewriting the narrative. And then came the knockout punch. He slid a grainy gas station security photo across the table, courtesy of his late uncle's legal contacts. The image showed a white teenager lurking near the Audi hours before the theft, hoodie up, eyes shifty. "This," Kevin said, his voice steady but with a hint of gotcha glee, "is who you should have been chasing, not me." The courtroom exploded in whispers. Reporters scrambled, locals gaped, and Bennett leaned forward, his gavel forgotten. Wright's face was redder than a Sunset Boulevard stoplight, his smugness evaporating like a puddle in the desert. "This is preposterous," he sputtered, but Kevin's photo was a grenade, and the pin was out. The gallery buzzed with cover-up theories, and even the bailiff raised an eyebrow. Kevin's calm was unnerving, like a kid who'd studied the rulebook while everyone else was playing checkers. His uncle's training, late nights poring over law books, Mock trials in their cramped apartment was paying off. But the photo wasn't just evidence. It was a clue to something bigger. Why had Officer Morales pinned this on Kevin? Was it laziness or something shadier? Kevin's mother, Veronica, in the back row, gripped her purse, her eyes shining with pride but flickering with fear. She knew her brother's death wasn't an accident, and Kevin was poking a bear that might bite back. The courtroom was no longer a grinder. It was a battlefield, and Kevin was rewriting the rules. With every question, he chipped away at the system's arrogance, exposing cracks that made the suits squirm. The stage was set for a reversal that'd shake the rafters, but Kevin wasn't done. He had one more bomb to drop, and it was going to blow the roof off. For now, he stood tall, hoodie and all, ready to take his next swing. What happens when a kid with a hoodie and a grudge turns a courtroom into his own personal coliseum, making legal lions look like house cats? Kevin Brooks is no longer just defending himself. He's dismantling a system that's been rigging the game against him from the start. With a secret photo already shaking the Los Angeles County Courthouse, our 19-year-old underdog is about to drop a bombshell that'll have jaws hitting the floor faster than an LA earthquake. This mystic life story saga is serving mystery thicker than a Venice Beach fog, drama spicier than a taco truck's secret sauce, and justice with a side of sassy swagger. Got a moment when you beat the odds? Spill it in the comments, and if you're loving this courtroom chaos, smash that subscribe button for mystic life stories. Let's see Kevin swing for the fences. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was a pressure cooker turned inferno, the gallery's whispers now a full-on roar. Spectators, reporters with twitching pens, locals with wide eyes, leaned forward like they were watching a thriller's climax. Kevin Brooks, the 19-year-old in a sagging hoodie, stood at the defendant's table, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos he'd unleashed. Judge Harold Bennett, whose scowl could have grounded a 747, gripped his gavel, his stern facade cracking under Kevin's relentless logic. Prosecutor Douglas Wright, once smug as a Hollywood agent, was sweating through his tailored suit, his notes a crumpled mess. The room had expected a quick guilty verdict, but Kevin's gas station photo, showing a white teenager near the stolen Audi A6, had turned their slam dunk into a fumbled layup. The gallery buzzed with cover-up theories, and even the bailiff's poker face twitched. Kevin wasn't just fighting for his freedom, he was rewriting the script, and the system was choking on the plot twist. Kevin stood tall, his voice steady as a sniper's aim, slicing through the prosecution's case like a hot knife through butter. "Your Honor," he began, his tone laced with just enough sass to make Wright squirm. "Let's talk about those fingerprints. The state says they prove I stole the car. But here's the thing. I touched that Audi at a 7-Eleven just leaning on it, door already unlocked. You telling me touching something makes you a criminal?" The gallery chuckled, a few locals nodding like they'd been there. Wright sputtered. "That's irrelevant." But Kevin was already rolling. Irrelevant? Then why wasn't a forensic expert called to verify the chain of custody? You know, the part where evidence doesn't magically appear on a steering wheel? Bennett's eyes narrowed, a flicker of intrigue breaking through his gruff exterior. The reporters scribbled like their pens were on fire, and a spectator whispered, "Kid's got guts." Next, Kevin zeroed in on the arrest. "The state says I was fleeing," he said, his voice dripping with, "Y'all can't be serious" energy. "I was arrested 3 blocks away, walking home with a Slurpee, not exactly Grand Theft Auto vibes." The gallery snickered, picturing Kevin sipping a blue raspberry while cops swarmed. "Officer Morales claims he saw me driving, but his GPS logs, where are they? Oh, right, conveniently missing." Wright's face was now a shade of tomato, his airtight case leaking like a punctured tire. Kevin drove the point home. "And let's not forget Gerald Whitman, the car owner, who said the thief was a white teenager. I'm standing here, clearly not fitting that description, Yet I'm the one in cuffs. Funny how that works. The courtroom went pin-drop silent, the gallery's smugness replaced by a mix of awe and unease. Bennett leaned forward, his gavel forgotten, while Wright fumbled, "This is speculative." But the damage was done. Kevin wasn't just defending, he was exposing. Then came the bombshell that turned the courtroom into a full-on crime drama. Kevin reached into his folder, his calm masking a fire that could have lit up downtown LA. "Your Honor, I have one more thing," he said, sliding a document across the table like he was dealing a royal flush. "This is a leaked police memo, courtesy of an anonymous whistleblower. It shows Officer Morales was under pressure to boost arrest numbers, part of a precinct-wide quota system targeting minorities like me." The gallery gasped, a collective "no way" rippling through. Reporters' pens flew, locals gaped, and even the bailiff's jaw twitched. The memo tied directly to Kevin's late uncle, a public defender who'd been investigating this same corruption before his accidental car crash. "This isn't just about me," Kevin said, his voice steady but burning. "It's about a system that picks kids like me to fill cells, not find truth." Wright's face was now a full-on meltdown, his objection drowned out by the gallery's uproar. Bennett banged his gavel, but his eyes were locked on Kevin, a mix of shock and grudging respect. The memo was a grenade, and Kevin had pulled the pin. It didn't just clear him. It exposed a rotting underbelly of corruption that echoed his uncle's lost fight. The gallery was no longer a peanut gallery. It was a witness stand, every spectator feeling the weight of Kevin's words. Veronica Brooks in the back row gripped her purse, tears brimming but her chin high. She'd watched her brother die chasing this truth, and now her son was picking up the torch. Kevin's logic was surgical, his delivery a masterclass in, "I studied for this." But the memo was personal, a middle finger to the system that had tried to bury him and his family. Wright tried to rally, stammering about unverified documents, but his voice was a squeak against Kevin's thunder. Bennett's scowl softened, his silence louder than any ruling. The courtroom wasn't just a stage anymore, it was a reckoning, and Kevin was holding the gavel. The air crackled with anticipation, every eye on Kevin as he stood, hoodie and all, like a gladiator who'd just slayed a lion. The system's arrogance was crumbling, and the gallery's awe was palpable. Reporters were already drafting headlines, "Teen School's Court," while locals whispered about that memo. Kevin's mother, Veronica, held her breath, knowing this was bigger than one case. The stage was set for a climax that'd shake the rafters, but Kevin's fight wasn't over. He'd exposed the cracks, but the system was still standing. For now, he'd turned the hunter into the hunted, and the courtroom was his arena. What happens when a kid in a hoodie doesn't just beat the system, but makes it bow? Kevin Brooks has turned the Los Angeles County Courthouse into his personal arena, shredding a rigged case with the precision of a legal ninja and the swagger of a street poet. With a leaked memo exposing police corruption and a gallery hanging on his every word, our 19-year-old underdog is poised to deliver a knockout that'll echo beyond the courtroom. This Mystic Life Stories saga is dishing mystery thicker than an LA smog, drama juicier than a Hollywood blockbuster, and justice with a side of sassy mic-drop magic. Got a story where you proved everyone wrong? Spill it in the comments. And if you're eating up this courtroom fireworks show, smash that subscribe button for Mystic Life Stories. Let's see Kevin land the final blow. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was no longer a courtroom. It was a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding, the air crackling like a live wire. The gallery, once a smug peanut gallery of reporters and locals, was now a sea of stunned faces, their whispers a mix of awe and disbelief. Kevin Brooks stood at the defendant's table, his worn hoodie a badge of defiance against the polished suits and gleaming brass. His surgical dismantling of the prosecution's case, fingerprints debunked, Officer Morales' lies exposed, a gas station photo pointing to the real thief, had flipped the script. The leaked police memo, revealing a quota-driven scheme targeting minorities, was the cherry on top, turning Kevin's defense into a full-blown exposé. Judge Harold Bennett, whose scowl could have stopped traffic on the 405, gripped his gavel, his stern facade crumbling under the weight of Kevin's truth. Prosecutor Douglas Wright, once strutting like a peacock, was a sweaty mess, his tailored suit clinging to him like a bad decision. The room, expecting a quick conviction, was now holding its breath, waiting for the hammer to drop. Kevin stood tall, his calm exterior masking a fire that could have lit up Skid Row. He'd just laid out the memo's damning details, Morales' pressure to boost arrests, a precinct pattern that echoed the corruption his late uncle had died chasing. The gallery was electric, reporters scribbling like their careers depended on it, locals whispering, "This kid's a legend." Kevin's mother, Veronica Brooks, sat in the back row, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles paled, her eyes a mix of pride and fear. She'd lost her brother to this same system, and now her son was staring it down, hoodie and all. Wright tried to rally, his voice a desperate squeak. "Your Honor, this memo is unverified hearsay," he stammered, flailing like a fish on a hook. But Kevin wasn't letting him wriggle free. "Unverified?" he said, his tone laced with, "You're embarrassing yourself, sass. Then why's the precinct's internal audit mentioned in the same memo? Care to explain that, Mr. Wright?" The gallery gasped, a few locals chuckling at Wright's red-faced meltdown. Bennett banged his gavel, but his eyes were locked on Kevin, a grudging respect flickering through his gruff exterior. The tension was thicker than an LA traffic jam, every eye on Judge Bennett as he leaned forward, his scowl softening into something almost human. "Mr. Brooks," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of a man rethinking his entire career, "you've made a compelling case." The gallery held its breath, pencils frozen, phones recording every second. Wright slumped in his chair, his airtight case now a pile of legal confetti. Kevin stood steady, his gaze unwavering, channeling every late-night study session with his uncle, every promise to fight for kids like him. Bennett paused, his gavel hovering like a guillotine. "In light of the evidence, or lack thereof," he said, "I have no choice but to declare case dismissed." The gavel slammed down, a thunderclap that shook the room. The gallery erupted. Reporters shouted questions, locals cheered, and a few clapped like they'd just seen the Lakers win the championship. Wright buried his face in his hands, looking like he'd aged a decade in 10 minutes. The chaos was deafening, but Kevin stayed calm, gathering his papers with the precision of a chess master packing up after checkmate. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrusting forward like spears, but Kevin's focus was on his mother in the back row. Veronica's tears streamed, her smile brighter than the LA sun. The gallery was still buzzing, locals whispering, "That kid's a genius," reporters drafting headlines like "Teen School System." But then came the moment that turned the climax into legend. As Kevin moved to leave, Bennett raised a hand, his gruff voice cutting through the din. "Mr. Brooks, a word." The room hushed, every eye on the judge, whose usual bark was now a quiet rumble. "You've got a future in law," he said, his eyes meeting Kevin's with a rare sincerity. "Don't waste it." The words landed like a spotlight, heavy with meaning, a nod from a man who'd spent decades on the bench, humbled by a kid in a hoodie. The gallery gasped. a few locals nodding like they'd just witnessed history. Kevin gave a slight nod, his face stoic, but his eyes blazing with purpose. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady but carrying a "this ain't over" edge. The courtroom was a whirlwind, but Kevin was the eye of the storm. He'd done more than win his freedom. He'd cracked open a system that thrived on bias, honoring his uncle's legacy with every word. Veronica stood, her purse clutched tight, her pride a beacon in the chaos. Bennett sat back, his gavel still, his mind clearly wrestling with the system he'd served. Wright, defeated, shuffled his papers, avoiding eye contact like a kid caught cheating on a test. The gallery was no longer a jury of skeptics. It was a crowd of believers, some whispering about that memo, others eyeing Kevin like he was the next big thing. Reporters were already tweeting, "Hoodie hero humiliates court," while locals swapped, "I knew he was innocent" claims, conveniently forgetting their earlier bets against him. Kevin's victory was more than a dismissed case. It was a middle finger to a system that had tried to bury him. His uncle's shadow loomed large, the suspicious car crash now a nagging question. Had Kevin's fight just poked a bigger bear? Veronica's tearful smile said it all. Her boy had done the impossible. But the war wasn't over. The stage was set for a resolution that had tugged the heartstrings, but Kevin's blazing eyes hinted at battles to come. For now, he'd slayed the giant, and the courthouse would never be the same. What happens when a kid who just schooled a courtroom walks out free but knows the fight's far from over? Kevin Brooks, our hoodie-wearing legal ninja, has left the Los Angeles County Courthouse in shambles, his victory over a rigged system echoing like a mic drop heard round the city. But as he steps into the sunlight, with his mom's arms waiting and a corrupt shadow lurking, this mystic life story's saga proves justice is just the start of a bigger battle. Packed with mystery, darker than an LA alley, drama stickier than a Venice boardwalk, and a heart tug that'll make you text your mom, this tale's got it all. Ever had a win that felt like a beginning? Drop it in the comments, and if you're hooked on this mix of grit and sass, smash that subscribe button for Mystic Life Stories. Let's see what comes next for Kevin. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was still buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest, the gallery's cheers and reporters' shouts spilling out onto the steps. Kevin Brooks, the 19-year-old who just turned a guilty verdict into legal confetti, walked out with the quiet dignity of a guy who'd stared down a dragon and lived to tell the tale. His worn hoodie, once a mark of his underdog status, now felt like a superhero's cape, flapping in the warm LA breeze. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrusting forward like they were auditioning for a blockbuster, yelling, "Kevin, how'd you do it?" and "What's next?" But Kevin sidestepped them like a pro dodging traffic on the 101. His eyes fixed on the figure at the bottom of the steps. His mother, Veronica Brooks. Her face was a canvas of pride and tears, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn purse that had seen better days. "You did it, baby," she whispered, pulling him into a hug so fierce it could have stopped a tsunami. Kevin melted into her arms, the weight of the trial lifting for a moment, replaced by the warmth of the woman who'd always believed in him. The crowd parted, some locals clapping, others snapping photos like Kevin was the next big TikTok star. "That's the kid who schooled the suits," one guy shouted, earning a laugh from the pack. Veronica pulled back, cupping Kevin's face, her voice cracking. "Your uncle would be so proud," she said, her eyes flickering with the pain of her brother's loss. Kevin nodded, his throat tight. His uncle, the public defender who taught him law over late-night pizza and mock trials, had died in a car accident that reeked of foul play, a hit tied to the same corrupt officials Kevin's memo had exposed. That victory in the courtroom wasn't just for him. It was for every kid the system tried to crush, for every fight his uncle never got to finish. Kevin's eyes burned with purpose, his hoodie hiding a heart ready for the next round. From the courthouse balcony, Judge Harold Bennett watched, his usual scowl replaced by a pensive frown. The man who'd dismissed Kevin as a troubled kid now looked like he'd swallowed a bitter pill. "We need to do better," he muttered to his aide, his voice low but heavy, like he was finally seeing the cracks in the system he'd served for decades. The aide nodded, scribbling notes, but Bennett's gaze lingered on Kevin and Veronica, their silhouettes framed against the LA skyline. He'd spent years hammering gavels, but today, a 19-year-old had hammered his conscience. The gallery's buzz faded behind him. Reporters already tweeting headlines like, "Hoodie hero crushes courtroom corruption." But Bennett's introspection was a quiet earthquake, a sign the system might just wobble under Kevin's truth. Kevin and Veronica walked away, her arm looped through his, their bond a lighthouse in the storm. The courthouse steps, littered with reporters' coffee cups and locals' dropped jaws, faded into the background. Kevin's mind, though, was racing. The leaked memo, the gas station photo, his uncle's death. They weren't just pieces of a trial. They were clues to a bigger puzzle. The corruption he'd exposed was a hydra, and cutting off one head didn't kill the beast. Veronica squeezed his hand, sensing his thoughts. "You don't have to carry it all, baby," she said, her voice soft but firm. Kevin gave her a half smile, the kind that said, "I know, but I will." His uncle's voice echoed in his head. "Justice isn't a sprint, Kev, it's a marathon." The city stretched out before them, its neon lights a mix of promise and peril, and Kevin knew this win was just the starting line. The societal lesson hit harder than a rush-hour fender bender. Kevin's triumph wasn't just a W for him, it was a spotlight on a system that thrived on bias, from quota-driven arrests to ignored evidence. His knowledge, honed by his uncle's mentorship, had saved him. But what about the countless others without his tools? The memo's revelation, cops targeting minorities to pad stats, wasn't a glitch. It was a feature, built into the system's DNA. Kevin's fight echoed his uncle's lost battle, a reminder that corruption didn't die easy. Locals on the steps were already whispering about that memo, some vowing to dig deeper, others shaking their heads at how close Kevin came to being another statistic. The reporters' headlines were spreading like wildfire. "Teen exposes police quotas." But the real fire was in the questions they sparked. How many Kevins were out there, silenced by a gavel? Kevin's victory was a beacon, but the shadows lingered. The official tied to his uncle's crash was still out there, and the memo's whistleblower hadn't surfaced. Veronica's hug was a lifeline, grounding Kevin as his mind churned with next steps. Would he chase the corruption, risking the same fate as his uncle? Or would he take Bennett's advice, hit the books, and fight from the inside? The city's hum was a call to action, its pulse urging him forward. Kevin and Veronica disappeared into the crowd, their bond a testament to family strength, but his blazing eyes said he wasn't done. The courthouse might have been a win, but the war was just heating up, and Kevin Brooks was ready to run the marathon. What if one kid's courtroom win could light a fire under a system that's been cheating justice for years? Kevin Brooks didn't just walk out of the Los Angeles County Courthouse free. He left a smoking crater where bias and corruption used to hide. But with a shadowy official still out there and his uncle's death unsolved, this Mystic Life Stories saga asks, how many Kevins are still fighting? Brimming with mystery, darker than an LA noir, drama fiercer than a freeway chase, and a heart tug that'll make you hug your family tighter, this tale's a wake-up call wrapped in sass. Ever seen a story that changed how you see the world? Drop it in the comments, and if you're all in for justice with a side of swagger, smash that subscribe button for Mystic Life Stories. Let's unpack the truth Kevin's fight exposed. The Los Angeles skyline glittered like a promise, but for Kevin Brooks, the courthouse victory was just the opening act. His story is a siren blaring through the city's hum. How many innocent people are judged by bias, not evidence? Kevin's knowledge, forged in late-night study sessions with his late uncle, a public defender killed in a suspicious accident, saved him from a rigged system. But what about the countless others without his tools? The leaked memo exposing police quotas, the gas station photo pointing to the real thief, the whispers of corruption tied to his uncle's death, they're not just plot twists. They're cracks in a system built to fail kids like Kevin. His fight echoed his uncle's lost battle, a stark reminder that justice isn't a gift. It's a grind. The courthouse steps, still littered with reporters' coffee cups, were a stage for a bigger question. How do we fix a machine that churns out injustice like it's on autopilot? Kevin's triumph was a beacon, but the shadows were long. The official linked to his uncle's crash was still out there, a ghost in the system's machinery. The whistleblower who slipped him the memo hadn't surfaced, leaving a trail of what-ifs. Kevin's mother, Veronica, stood by him, her fierce hug a testament to family as the ultimate anchor. But her eyes held a flicker of fear. She'd lost her brother to this fight, and now her son was picking up the torch. The city's neon pulse was both a call and a warning. Kevin's win was a spark, but corruption was a hydra, and one head down didn't mean victory. Locals on the streets were already buzzing, some vowing to dig into the memo's claims, others shaking their heads at how close Kevin came to being another number. Headlines screamed, "Hoodie hero exposes police plot." But the real story was in the questions they sparked. Who else is paying for the system's sins? Kevin's story hits you right in the gut, like watching a 19-year-old, dismissed for his skin and his youth, silence an entire justice system. The nail-biting twists, the mystery of his uncle's death, the gas station photo, the leaked memo, turn this case into a corruption-busting thriller that keeps you glued to the edge of your seat. Veronica's tearful hug, Kevin's memories of his uncle, they're the heartwarming spark in the storm, tugging at your soul. Kevin's wit, the way he slices through the prosecutor's case with a smirk, makes the story feel real, balancing the heavy themes with a relatable edge. The lessons. Don't judge a book by its cover. Knowledge is power. Silence fuels injustice. Hit hard and linger. This is a wake-up call, igniting a hunger for justice and a belief that one person can shake the system. But the shadow of corruption leaves you craving more. Kevin's story isn't just a win. It's a challenge to look at the world differently and fight for those still trapped. Expert perspective and shocking. Punchline. Dr. Angela Carter, a criminal justice scholar, weighs in. Kevin's victory exposes how systemic bias thrives on silence and shortcuts. His knowledge and family support turned the tables, but his story underscores a brutal truth. The system isn't broken. It's built to favor quotas over justice. Change starts with voices like his, demanding accountability. But here's the punchline that'll leave you reeling. Days after Kevin's win, a whistleblower's encrypted file surfaced, revealing the official tied to his uncle's death was linked to a citywide corruption ring, rigging cases for years. The kicker? The official vanished, leaving a note. "You can't stop the game." Is he still out there, pulling strings? Share Kevin's story to spark change. Every retweet, every convo chips away at injustice. Comment, how can we fix a system that fails the vulnerable? Subscribe to Mystic Life Stories for more tales that challenge, inspire, and demand justice. Let's keep the fire burning.